Eliza's days began before dawn, a relentless cycle driven by the gnawing emptiness of her wallet. The single room she rented, a cramped space with peeling wallpaper and a window that rattled with every gust of wind, offered little comfort against the biting chill of the early morning. Yet, despite the exhaustion etched onto her face, her eyes held a defiant spark, a testament to a spirit that refused to be extinguished by hardship. She juggled two demanding part-time jobs, a morning shift at a bustling coffee shop and an evening gig at a local diner, each hour meticulously tallied to cover her tuition and her ailing grandmother's mounting medical bills. This particular morning, after a long, grueling shift serving coffees to a flurry of commuters, Eliza was navigating the familiar, narrow alleyways that led to her apartment building. Her worn phone was clutched in her hand, its dim screen illuminating a message from the diner about an unexpected extra shift. Lost in the dim glow, she rounded a sharp corner, her momentum carrying her straight into a solid, unyielding form. Oof! A sharp gasp escaped her lips as the impact sent her reeling, her old, tattered notebook tumbling from her grasp and skidding across the grimy pavement. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Eliza gasped, immediately bending to apologize, her face flushed with embarrassment. But before she could retrieve her notebook, a hand surprisingly well-manured despite its seemingly humble owner, swiftly picked it up. "It's quite all right. My fault entirely. I wasn't looking," a low, resonant voice replied. Eliza looked up, her gaze meeting a pair of surprisingly intense eyes. The man before her was dressed plainly, a faded t-shirt and worn jeans, a stark contrast to the subtle authority that seemed to emanate from him. He looked as weary as she felt, perhaps another soul caught in the relentless grind of the city. Yet, there was an unmistakable glint in his eyes, a sharp intelligence that belied his unassuming attire. This was Daniel, unbeknownst to Eliza. He was the sole heir to the formidable Zenith Group, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. Disillusioned by the endless parade of gold diggers and social climbers, Daniel had embarked on a secret mission. He was living as a commoner, testing the waters of human sincerity, desperately searching for someone who would see beyond his immense wealth and appreciate him for who he truly was. The moment Eliza's worn notebook fell, his gaze had lingered on its well-thumbed pages. Filled with hurried notes and ambitious doodles, it spoke volumes of a fierce, unyielding spirit, a stark contrast to the superficiality he was accustomed to. Here you go," Daniel said softly, extending the notebook to her. Eliza took it, offering a small, awkward smile. "Thank you so much." He gave a slight nod, a subtle gesture that felt both polite and distant, before turning and walking in the opposite direction. His departure left an inexplicable impression on Eliza, a fleeting sense of something more profound than a simple collision. She dismissed it as a momentary oddity, a fleeting encounter in the drab reality of her day. Clutching her notebook, Eliza continued her journey home, oblivious. She had no idea that the man she had just bumped into was a powerful CEO, a titan of industry, who was about to weave himself inextricably into the fabric of her life. She was unaware of the elaborate test he was conducting, a dangerous game that would soon challenge her perception of reality, love, and the very meaning of true connection. This seemingly insignificant collision was, in fact, the first thread in a complex tapestry of deception, burgeoning affection, and unforeseen challenges that would irrevocably alter both their destinies. A few days after their unexpected collision, Eliza found herself staring at Daniel across the worn-out counter of the convenience store. He was hunched over a steaming cup of instant noodles, his frame seemingly swallowed by a faded work jacket. A familiar pang of sympathy stirred within Eliza. He looked exactly like so many others in their neighborhood, tired, perpetually on the brink, yet clinging to a quiet dignity. "Oh, you're the one who picked up my notebook the other day," Eliza exclaimed, a genuine smile breaking through her fatigue. "Do you live around here?" Daniel, startled, nearly dropped his noodles. He looked up, a flicker of surprise in his intense eyes, before a gentle smile softened his features. "Yes, I do. Just a few blocks away. And you? Do you work nearby?" "Just finished a shift." "Actually," Eliza replied, gesturing with her own cup of lukewarm instant noodles. "Figured this was the quickest dinner. Have you eaten properly? Or is that it for you too?" Her simple, unpretentious question melted something within Daniel. He'd encountered countless people, but never one so direct, so utterly devoid of pretense. Sitting across from him at the rickety plastic table, Eliza ate her noodles with a quiet relish, her movements unhurried despite the late hour. She didn't complain about her exhausting day or the meager meal. She simply was. It's about all I can afford sometimes, Daniel admitted, a carefully constructed sigh escaping his lips. He watched her, a meticulous observer by nature, looking for any hint of judgment, any subtle shift in her expression. There was none. Only a shared understanding, a quiet empathy that settled comfortably between them. Tell me about it. Eliza chuckled, a wry twist of her lips. Some days, I swear I run on fumes and instant coffee. But hey, at least we're not alone, right? That unassuming comment resonated deeply with Daniel. He had spent his life surrounded by people, yet felt profoundly alone. His wealth had built walls, not bridges, but with Eliza. In this humble convenience store, he felt a connection, a shared humanity that transcended all the artifice of his world. He could see, in the gentle lines around her eyes, the quiet strength that hardship had forged. She wasn't asking for anything, wasn't trying to impress him. She was just there, genuine and real. Over the next few weeks, their paths continued to intersect with increasing frequency. They'd often bump into each other on the way to or from their various jobs, sometimes sharing a hurried 5 minutes over a cheap coffee, other times walking a few blocks together in the twilight hours. Daniel, ever the meticulous observer, noted Eliza's relentless work ethic. She never seemed to rest, always hustling, her energy a constant source of quiet admiration for him. He saw her dedication, her unwavering spirit in the face of relentless adversity. Still awake. Daniel. Eliza's voice was soft, hesitant. He flinched, turning sharply, his eyes widening slightly. Eliza, just thinking, taking a walk. A walk at this hour? You must be exhausted. Eliza slowly approached, then sank onto the bench beside him, leaving a comfortable distance between them. The silence that fell between them wasn't awkward. It was a companionable quiet, a shared moment of respite from the clamor of their demanding lives. Something on your mind? She asked gently, her voice barely a whisper against the cool night air. Daniel offered a bitter, self-deprecating laugh. Life, I suppose. It has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. He spoke of the suffocating pressure of his family's expectations, the empty pretense of his social circle, but cloaked it in vague terms, making it sound like universal struggles. Eliza, who understood struggle more intimately than most, nodded in profound agreement. Her own life was a constant uphill battle. Yeah, I know the feeling, but at least the stars are out tonight. Right? Makes things feel a little less crushing. Eliza tilted her head back, gazing at the distant pinpricks of light in the vast darkness. In those quiet moments, Daniel found a peace he rarely experienced in his privileged existence. With Eliza, he wasn't the CEO of Zenith Group. He was just Daniel, a man struggling, or at least pretending to struggle, and finding solace in genuine connection. He told her snippets of his carefully curated backstory, his dreams of making a mark, always omitting the staggering truth of his inheritance. He watched as her eyes lit up, as she offered words of encouragement and shared her own modest aspirations. Eliza, in turn, found herself opening up to Daniel. She spoke of her grandmother's declining health, the constant worry of medical bills, and her burning desire to finish her studies and secure a stable future for them both. Daniel listened intently, his gaze unwavering, offering not empty platitudes, but a quiet, understanding presence. She felt seen, truly seen. In a way, she rarely was. He wasn't trying to fix her problems or offer grand solutions. He was simply listening, and that, to Eliza, was everything. Their bond deepened with each passing day. They shared humble meals at Eliza's favorite cheap diner, a tiny place tucked away in a side alley, its walls adorned with faded celebrity photos. The sizzling kimchi stew and comforting egg rolls tasted like luxury in their shared company. Daniel, despite his true tastes, found genuine pleasure in these simple moments. It was here, in this unassuming setting, that he truly began to understand the profound difference between wealth and happiness. True happiness, he realized, lay not in the extravagance of a 5-star meal, but in the warmth of shared laughter over a humble bowl of stew. Excuse me, ma'am, could we get another bowl of rice? Daniel would often call out to the diner owner, his voice easy and familiar, a stark contrast to the formal tone he maintained in the boardroom. Eliza would smile, a soft, fond warmth spreading through her chest. He was so unassuming, so down to earth. He genuinely seemed to be one of them. Yet, a growing knot of guilt began to tighten in Daniel's stomach. Eliza's sincerity was a sharp contrast to his elaborate charade. She believed in him, trusted him, saw him as a kindred spirit in their shared struggle. The more genuine her affection grew, the more acutely he felt the weight of his deception. He knew that when the truth inevitably unraveled, the pain she would experience would be immense. He wanted to confess, to reveal everything, but the fear of losing her, of shattering the fragile bond they had built, held him captive. How could he tell her that he had been testing her, playing a part, when her kindness had been so utterly real? Their love, blossoming amidst the harsh realities of their fabricated poverty, was beautiful but precariously balanced on a foundation of lies. Daniel's hidden identity hung over them like a ticking time bomb. Eliza, lost in the simple joy of their budding romance, remained blissfully unaware that the man she was falling in love with harbored a secret that could destroy everything. The shadow of truth, though unseen, was already stretching, threatening to engulf their delicate, newfound happiness. As Eliza and Daniel's connection deepened, their small world, built on shared struggles and quiet moments, began to feel like a sanctuary. Every shared meal, every late-night conversation, every fleeting touch of hands felt more real, more profound than anything Eliza had ever experienced. Daniel, for his part, found himself increasingly enchanted by Eliza's unyielding spirit, her raw honesty, and her capacity for boundless kindness. He saw her not as a pawn in his elaborate test, but as a person, a woman who had, against all odds, captured his jaded heart. Yet, with every passing day, the chasm between his fabricated reality and his actual life widened, casting a lengthening shadow over their burgeoning romance. The guilt, once a dull ache, now pulsed with increasing intensity. He found himself meticulously planning his days to maintain his poor man facade, a constant, exhausting performance that chipped away at his conscience. Each time Eliza looked at him with her trusting, earnest eyes, he felt a fresh stab of remorse. He was deceiving the one person who saw him without the lens of his wealth, the one person whose affection felt truly earned. Eliza, though deeply smitten, wasn't entirely blind. Small, almost imperceptible cracks began to appear in Daniel's carefully constructed persona, glimpses of a hidden world that clashed jarringly with the humble existence he presented. She often dismissed them, attributing them to fatigue or wishful thinking, but they lingered, like faint, unsettling whispers at the edge of her awareness. One crisp autumn evening, after a particularly late shift at the diner, Eliza was walking Daniel back to his supposed apartment, a dilapidated building in the heart of their gritty neighborhood. The streetlights cast long, distorted shadows, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and distant city fumes. They were deep in conversation, Eliza recounting a humorous mishap with a stubborn customer, Daniel laughing genuinely, his eyes crinkling at the corners. As they approached the dimly lit alley that led to his building, Eliza noticed a sleek, obsidian-black sedan, polished to a mirror sheen, parked discreetly under a drooping oak tree. Its presence felt jarringly out of place amidst the dented sedans and rusted delivery vans that usually lined the street. "Looks like someone's got a fancy ride," Eliza commented idly, not thinking much of it. Daniel, mid-sentence, suddenly stiffened. His laughter died on his lips, replaced by a subtle tension that Eliza barely registered. "Oh, yeah, probably just someone visiting," he mumbled, his gaze briefly flicking towards the car before quickly returning to Eliza. He quickened his pace slightly. Pulling her along, they reached the entrance of his building. "Well, this is me," Daniel said, his usual easygoing manner replaced by a peculiar hurriedness. "Thanks for walking with me, Eliza. Get home safe." He gave her a quick, almost fleeting smile. And then, before she could reply, he slipped inside the dark entranceway. Eliza lingered for a moment, a faint frown creasing her brow. That was unusual. Daniel usually stayed to chat for a few more minutes, or at least waited until she was out of sight. As she turned to walk away, she saw the sedan's rear door open. A figure, too obscured by shadow to be clearly identified, swiftly exited the car, its movements sharp and efficient, Then, the car's interior lights briefly illuminated, and for a split second, Eliza swore she saw Daniel's distinctive profile as he slid into the back seat. The door clicked shut, and the sedan, its engine a barely audible hum, glided silently away into the night, disappearing around the corner. Eliza stopped dead in her tracks. Her mind reeled. Daniel said he was walking home. And that car? It looked so expensive, like something out of a movie. She shook her head, trying to dislodge the unsettling image. No, it must have been a trick of the light, she muttered to herself, her breath misting in the cold air. Or maybe he just hitched a ride with a friend he bumped into. Yeah, that must be it. My eyes are just tired from all the late nights. She tried to rationalize it away, forcing herself to believe the simpler, more comforting explanation. But a tiny, insistent seed of doubt had been planted. Another instance came during one of their rare, stolen moments of relaxation. They were at a small, independent coffee shop near Eliza's university, the kind of place with mismatched furniture and the aroma of roasted beans filling the air. Daniel had just told her a hilarious story about a ridiculous interview he'd supposedly had for a construction job, mimicking the gruff foreman with surprising accuracy. Eliza was laughing so hard that tears streamed down her face. Daniel, reaching up to playfully wipe a tear from her cheek, inadvertently exposed his wrist. For a fleeting second, the soft glow from the window caught something on his left wrist. It wasn't the cheap, plastic watch Eliza often saw him wear, but a slim, elegant timepiece crafted from gleaming silver, its face a deep, almost iridescent blue. It shimmered with an understated luxury that screamed expensive, a stark contrast to his worn denim shirt and faded jeans. The sight was so incongruous, so out of place, that Eliza blinked, wondering if her eyes were playing tricks on her. "What was that?" she asked, her laughter subsiding, a sudden, inexplicable knot forming in her stomach. Daniel's hand froze. His playful grin vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic in his eyes. He quickly pulled his sleeve down, obscuring the watch. What? He asked, his voice a fraction too casual. Nothing, just, I thought I saw something on your wrist, Eliza replied, her voice trailing off. She tried to smile, to make light of it, but the image of the exquisite watch stubbornly remained in her mind. It couldn't be. He can barely afford rent, let alone a watch like that. My eyes must be strained. She convinced herself it was an optical illusion, a trick of the light, anything to avoid the unsettling implication. Yet, the anomalies continued, subtle whispers that echoed in the quiet corners of her mind. There was the occasional phone call he'd take, stepping away from her, his voice dropping to a low, authoritative murmur, sometimes using terminology that sounded far too sophisticated for a construction worker or delivery driver. Once, she'd smelled a faint but undeniably expensive cologne lingering on his worn jacket. Not the cheap, generic scents common in their neighborhood, but something refined and exclusive. She even noticed the way he carried himself, an innate confidence and ease that belied his struggling persona, a certain regal bearing that was almost impossible to mask. Eliza, in her deep affection and unwavering trust, always found an explanation: the car, a friend, the watch. A gift, perhaps, from a relative. The phone calls. Maybe he had a side hustle, something intellectual. The cologne, probably just picked up the scent from a wealthy customer. Her heart desperately clung to the Daniel she knew, the kind, empathetic, slightly awkward man who shared her struggles and made her feel less alone. To doubt him, to even entertain the idea that he might be lying, felt like a betrayal of her own deepest feelings. Daniel, meanwhile, was acutely aware of every close call, every near slip. Each time Eliza's eyes lingered a moment too long on something out of place, his heart would pound against his ribs. The guilt was a heavy cloak, suffocating him. He was falling deeper in love with her, a love that felt pure and unconditional, precisely because she knew nothing of his true identity. But the longer he maintained the charade, the greater the potential for devastating heartbreak. He wanted to confess, to lay bare his soul and beg for her understanding. But the fear of losing her was a paralyzing force. What if the truth shattered everything? What if she saw his deception as an unforgivable betrayal, rather than a clumsy attempt to find genuine connection? He convinced himself that he needed more time, that she needed to trust him completely before he could reveal the extent of his secret. He started subtly testing her boundaries, almost subconsciously, trying to gauge her reaction to hints of his other life. He would intentionally drop a casual, albeit vague, comment about board meetings, before quickly correcting himself to union meetings. Observing her reaction, she never seemed to notice the slip. He would momentarily forget to slouch or hunch his shoulders, letting his natural, confident posture take over, only to quickly correct himself when he caught a glimpse of her observing him. Still, she only saw a tired, perhaps stressed, fellow struggler. Her unwavering belief in his ordinary status was both a relief and a torment. The irony was not lost on him. He had started this test to find a genuine connection, only to build that connection on a foundation of lies. And now, the very genuineness he had sought in Eliza made the deception all the more painful. He was trapped in a gilded cage of his own making, the bars fashioned from his wealth and his fear. He often found himself standing outside her apartment building late at night, watching the single light in her window, his heart aching with a mixture of love, guilt, and the terrifying certainty that his carefully constructed world would eventually come crashing down, and Eliza would be caught in the wreckage. The small, seemingly insignificant anomalies were accumulating, like tiny grains of sand, slowly but surely building a fragile, invisible mountain of suspicion in Eliza's subconscious. She pushed them down, forced them away, but they never truly disappeared. They lay dormant, waiting for the spark that would ignite them into a blazing, undeniable truth. The stage was set, the characters were in place, and the delicate balance of their relationship was poised on the precipice of a shocking revelation. As Eliza and Daniel's tender connection deepened, an ominous shadow began to creep into Eliza's already challenging life. The world, unbeknownst to her, was far from the simple, struggling existence she shared with Daniel. His true identity, that of the powerful Zenith Group's CEO, was a secret that, despite his meticulous efforts, could not remain entirely concealed. People within his sprawling corporate empire were discreetly, yet relentlessly, searching for him, particularly his elusive fiancée, Olivia. Olivia, the heiress to a formidable fashion conglomerate and Daniel's preordained partner in an arranged marriage, was a woman of striking beauty and sharp intellect. But beneath the veneer of sophistication lay a ruthless ambition and a chilling possessiveness. Daniel was not merely a future husband, he was a strategic asset, a symbol of power and prestige that she believed was hers by right. His prolonged disappearance, a deliberate evasion of her, had ignited a cold fury within her. Olivia viewed his defiance as an unforgivable insult, a challenge to her authority. She had deployed private investigators, leaving no stone unturned, until their surveillance had finally, chillingly, pinpointed Eliza. How dare this common girl even breathe in the same air as Daniel? My Daniel. Olivia's voice was a low snarl as she threw a dossier onto her polished desk, scattering photographs of Eliza's cramped apartment and her weary figure serving coffee. Contempt and incandescent rage contorted her perfect features. The very existence of Eliza, this unassuming, impoverished woman, was an affront to Olivia's carefully curated world, an unbearable humiliation. She began to meticulously, maliciously, plot Eliza's downfall, her mind a viper's nest of schemes and retribution. Eliza, meanwhile, felt the subtle shift in the atmosphere around her. It was a creeping unease, a sense of being watched. There were inexplicable events, the sleek, unfamiliar luxury cars that occasionally idled near the diner where she worked, their tinted windows obscuring the faces within, the unsettling feeling of eyes on her back as she walked home late at night, a prickle of goosebumps despite the warmth of her worn jacket. Once, a stern-faced, impeccably dressed woman had brushed past her in the street, her eyes, cold and sharp, raking over Eliza with an almost predatory intensity. Eliza had dismissed it as city paranoia, a byproduct of her constant exhaustion. Am I just imagining things, too much coffee and not enough sleep? She'd murmur to herself, trying to shake off the unsettling sensations. Her life was already a relentless treadmill of work and worry. She had little mental bandwidth for phantom threats. Her focus remained steadfastly on Daniel, on the quiet joy he brought into her otherwise bleak existence. She clung to their shared vulnerability, believing it to be a shield against the world's harshness. She had no idea that these unsettling occurrences were not coincidences. but meticulously orchestrated acts by a ruthless enemy. Daniel, too, began to notice the subtle signs of intrusion around Eliza. The discreet surveillance vehicles that sometimes shadowed his own movements now seemed to linger longer near Eliza's neighborhood. He heard whispers from his inner circle that Olivia was growing impatient, her search for him intensifying. A cold dread settled in his stomach. If Olivia discovered Eliza's involvement, the consequences would be catastrophic. He desperately wanted to act, to protect Eliza, to shield her from the venomous reach of his world. But his self-imposed poverty, his carefully maintained facade, rendered him powerless. He was trapped, caught between his desperate need to protect the woman he loved and the elaborate lie he had constructed. The love he felt for Eliza, the fear of losing her, and the crushing weight of his deceit intertwined, creating a torturous internal conflict. He had sought genuine connection, and now that he had found it, it was ironically placing Eliza in unimaginable peril. The shadow of Olivia's ambition, cold and calculating, was now cast directly over Eliza, a harbinger of the storm that was about to break. The days that followed were a blur of escalating tension for Eliza. The subtle, unsettling sensations intensified into concrete assaults. Her part-time job at the bustling coffee shop, a lifeline for her dwindling finances, was inexplicably terminated. "I'm so sorry. Eliza, it's out of my hands," her manager had said, his voice laced with regret. "Some new corporate policy, apparently. We have to let some staff go." Eliza knew it wasn't true. Her performance reviews were always stellar, her work ethic beyond reproach. A cold dread settled in her stomach. It felt like a calculated move, something orchestrated by the unseen hand that had been subtly tormenting her. Then came the diner, her evening sanctuary. The owner, a kind, elderly woman who had treated Eliza like a granddaughter, seemed unusually withdrawn. A week later, Eliza found herself staring at another termination letter. "We're cutting down staff. Business is slow," the owner mumbled, avoiding Eliza's gaze. The lie hung heavy in the air. Eliza knew, she understood, with a chilling certainty, that someone powerful wanted her out of the picture. Her income sources, already meager, were systematically being severed, one by one. Desperate, Eliza scrambled to find new work, but every application seemed to hit an invisible wall. Interviews were canceled, promised shifts vanished, and a palpable sense of unease followed her. She could feel the chilling tendrils of a formidable enemy tightening around her, strangling her ability to survive. Her grandmother's medical bills, an already crushing burden, began to pile up, unchecked. The hospital sent increasingly stern notices, threatening to suspend treatment. Eliza's strength, once boundless, began to wane under the relentless assault. Her spirit, though not broken, was cracking under the strain. Meanwhile, Daniel, consumed by guilt and growing unease, was preparing to confess everything. He had spent restless nights devising a plan to slowly reveal his true identity, to explain his complex reasons, to beg for her understanding. He knew the truth would hurt, but he believed their bond was strong enough to weather it. He was about to make the call, to set their private meeting in motion, when fate, in its cruelest form, intervened. Eliza received an urgent call from the hospital. Her grandmother's condition had worsened unexpectedly, requiring an immediate, complex procedure. The cost was astronomical, far beyond anything Eliza could possibly scrape together. "Please, just start the procedure," Eliza pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "I'll find the money, I promise." The hospital administrator, however, was unyielding. "Ms. Eliza, we cannot proceed without a significant down payment. We understand your situation, but these are hospital policies." In her despair, Eliza remembered a distant cousin, a social climber who sometimes attended glamorous city events. Perhaps, just perhaps, she could borrow a small amount, enough to start the critical procedure. The cousin, surprisingly, agreed to meet her at a high-profile charity gala that very evening, held at the city's most exclusive hotel, the Grand Imperial. Eliza arrived at the glittering hotel like a ghost from another world. Her worn, patched dress stood in stark contrast to the designer gowns and bespoke suits that shimmered around her. The opulent chandeliers, the echoing laughter, the clinking of champagne glasses. It was a world entirely alien to her. She felt like an intruder, an invisible speck in a dazzling, indifferent universe. Her only focus was finding her cousin, securing the loan, and rushing back to her grandmother. She navigated through the throngs of elegantly dressed guests, her eyes scanning for a familiar face. Then, her heart seemed to seize in her chest. Across the grand ballroom, near a towering floral arrangement, stood a figure that sent a jolt of ice through her veins. He was impossibly handsome, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that seemed to radiate silent power. His hair was perfectly coiffed, his posture regal, his very presence exuding an aura of undeniable authority, and clinging to his arm, draped in a glittering emerald gown, was Olivia. Eliza froze. Her breath hitched. The world around her seemed to slow, the vibrant music fading into a distant hum. The man turned his head slightly, his profile catching the light. A sharp jawline, a distinguished nose, a subtle curve of his lips as he conversed with Olivia. It was Daniel, but it wasn't her Daniel. Not the one who shared instant noodles and worried about torn suits. This Daniel was a stranger, a formidable, untouchable figure radiating wealth and power. Her mind reeled, frantically trying to reconcile the two images. It was impossible. It had to be a cruel mirage, a trick of her exhausted mind. Just as the denial began to take hold, Daniel's eyes, almost magnetically, found hers across the crowded room. His confident, authoritative demeanor instantly shattered, replaced by a flash of raw panic, then a deep, agonizing sorrow. He looked as if he had seen a ghost, or perhaps as if he himself had just been caught in a catastrophic lie. But Eliza recoiled as if struck. The pain, raw and excruciating, ripped through her. "Explain what? That you lied to me, that you played with my feelings, that my love, my last cent, my entire life was just some sick game for you." Her voice rose, raw with betrayal. Tears, hot and bitter, streamed down her face, blurring the glittering, mocking faces around her. During this intense period, Daniel found an unexpected source of inspiration. He often frequented the small, independent coffee shop where Eliza used to work, a quiet place where he could think. One afternoon, he noticed a worn notebook left behind on a table. Curious, he picked it up. It was Eliza's. He remembered seeing her with it, scribbling furiously during her breaks. He opened it, his heart catching in his throat as he recognized her familiar, elegant script. Meanwhile, Olivia, fueled by a scorching cocktail of fury and humiliation, was far from finished. The public exposure at the gala, the unceremonious unraveling of her carefully constructed image, had ignited a thirst for vengeance that bordered on obsession. Daniel's blatant disregard for their engagement, his public pursuit of Eliza, confirmed her darkest suspicions. She would not only destroy Eliza, but ensure Daniel understood the true cost of defying her. He began to read. Page after page, her words captivated him. She wrote with a raw honesty that mirrored her soul, her characters struggling against overwhelming odds, fighting for justice and truth. There was a particular story about a young woman, impoverished but fiercely independent, who found her voice through writing, using her words to expose the hypocrisy of the powerful. The parallels to their own situation were undeniable, almost uncanny. Daniel realized the immense power in her words, the ability she had to resonate with others, to stir emotions, to expose injustice through narrative. Eliza's gaze darted between the screen and the man standing frozen across the room. The man who was now undeniably Daniel Vance, CEO of Zenith Group. Her mind struggled to process the horrific disconnect, the countless small anomalies, the luxury car, the expensive watch, the fleeting glimpses of authority, now coalesced into a monstrous, undeniable truth. A daring plan began to form in his mind. He would not just expose Olivia through legal channels. He would use Eliza's powerful voice, her raw, authentic narrative, to shake the very foundations of Olivia's carefully constructed image. He saw a synergy. His irrefutable evidence coupled with Eliza's compelling storytelling could create an unstoppable force. He envisioned a public platform, a grand stage where Olivia's truth would be unveiled, not just through dry legal documents, but through the emotional impact of a story. Eliza's story. Olivia wasted no time. She used her family's vast influence to systematically dismantle Eliza's life, targeting her remaining support structures. She made a series of anonymous, damning calls to other local businesses, spreading insidious rumors about Eliza's unreliability, and questionable character, effectively blacklisting her from any future employment in the neighborhood. The Zenith Group's annual charity gala, a highly publicized event attended by the city's most influential figures and covered by major media outlets, was just around the corner. Olivia, still convinced she held the upper hand, was expected to attend as Daniel's supposed fiancé, an opportunity to publicly reaffirm their alliance. Daniel saw it not as a social obligation, but as the perfect battleground. "You're a monster, Daniel Vance, a cruel, heartless monster," she sobbed, her voice breaking. The night of the gala arrived. The Grand Imperial Hotel's ballroom shimmered with an almost suffocating opulence. Guests in designer wear mingled, their laughter tinkling like crystal. Olivia, draped in a magnificent emerald gown, her smile a brittle facade, swept through the crowd, basking in the attention. She spotted Daniel entering, a powerful figure in a custom-tailored dark suit, his presence radiating an undeniable, almost chilling authority. He looked different, sharper, more resolute than she had ever seen him. "I hear she has financial troubles," Olivia purred into the phone, her voice dripping with false concern, leaving just enough insinuation to poison Eliza's reputation. "And she's quite volatile, not the kind of person you want around your establishment, is she?" Olivia, ever the opportunist, immediately glided towards him, linking her arm through his with a possessive smile for the cameras. "Darling, you're finally here. Everyone's been waiting." Breaking news. Daniel Vance, heir apparent to Zenith Group, officially named CEO. Daniel's gaze was cold, unyielding. He detached her arm from his movement swift and deliberate, sending a ripple of surprised murmurs through the onlookers. He ignored Olivia's shocked gasp, his eyes fixed on the grand stage at the front of the ballroom. He walked directly towards it, his footsteps measured and purposeful. A hushed silence fell over the crowd as he approached the podium, bathed in the glow of the spotlights. Eliza, unaware of the insidious campaign against her, found every attempt to secure new work met with cold politeness or outright rejection. She applied for minimum wage jobs, desperate for any income, but each door slammed shut. The chilling tendrils of Olivia's power were tightening around her, systematically strangling her ability to earn a living. He picked up the microphone, his voice resonating through the vast hall, low but utterly commanding. "Good evening, everyone. I am Daniel Vance, CEO of Zenith Group." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room, meeting the eyes of the stunned attendees, including a now furious Olivia. "Tonight, I stand before you not to celebrate, but to unveil a truth about deceit, cruelty, and the abuse of power, a truth that involves Ms. Olivia Sterling and her family. She couldn't stand it. She couldn't breathe in the suffocating air of their deceit. With every ounce of strength left in her shattered body, Eliza turned and ran. She ran past the stunned guests, past the flashing cameras, past the security guards, past the opulent facade of the Grand Imperial Hotel, leaving behind the man who had torn her world apart. Daniel's frantic shouts of her name echoed behind her, but they were swallowed by the roar of her own heartbreak. Her pure, innocent love had been trampled under the gilded heel of a cruel deception, leaving nothing but devastation in its wake. A collective gasp swept through the ballroom. Olivia's face, moments ago radiating confidence, turned a ghastly shade of white. Her eyes, wide with horror, stared at Daniel, understanding dawning on her face. This wasn't a romantic gesture. This was an attack. But Olivia's vindictive reach extended beyond Eliza's livelihood. She discovered Daniel's clandestine arrangements for Eliza's grandmother's medical care. Enraged by his continued support for her rival, Olivia moved to cut off that lifeline. She exerted immense pressure on the hospital board, using her family's financial ties and political leverage to halt the grandmother's treatment. Daniel then gestured to the massive media screen behind him. It flickered to life, displaying meticulously organized data, financial records, email exchanges, and damning testimonies. He began to speak, his voice calm, rational, yet imbued with an unwavering moral authority. He systematically laid bare Olivia's illegal dealings, the ruthless corporate maneuvers, and most damningly, her targeted campaign of harassment against Eliza, detailing the job losses, the blacklisting, and the despicable attempt to halt Eliza's grandmother's medical treatment. He even played a chilling audio recording of Olivia's phone call to the hospital, her voice cold and devoid of empathy as she demanded the suspension of services. "No, it can't be," Eliza whispered, her voice barely a breath. Her legs felt like lead, threatening to buckle beneath her. You're Daniel Vance, the CEO." The ballroom erupted in chaos. Gasps turned to indignant shouts. Murmurs swelled into a roar of disbelief and outrage. Olivia, her carefully constructed facade crumbling, shrieked, "You liar! This is slander! You'll regret this! Daniel!" She lunged towards the podium, her emerald gown a blur. But she was swiftly intercepted by Daniel's security detail, who expertly escorted her away amidst the flashing cameras and frenzied reporters. "I'm afraid there's been an unforeseen administrative issue with the patient's funding," the hospital administrator stammered to Eliza, his face pale with discomfort. "We regret to inform you that treatment must be suspended until the matter is resolved." Daniel remained impassive, his gaze resolute. He had exposed everything. The truth, long hidden in the shadows of power and privilege, now blazed under the harsh glare of public scrutiny. He had risked everything: his reputation, his family's legacy, even his personal safety to bring justice. He had done it for Eliza, for the purity of her heart, and for the promise of a future built on honesty. The revelation was complete, the counterattack launched. The story was hurtling towards its climax, and the true battle for justice, and for Eliza's forgiveness, had just begun. The aftermath of Daniel's explosive revelation at the gala was nothing short of a seismic event. The news spread like wildfire, dominating every major media outlet. Headlines screamed of corporate espionage, financial fraud, and the shocking abuse of power by the Sterling family heiress. Public opinion, once swayed by Olivia's polished image, turned swiftly and ferociously against her. The once revered Sterling fashion conglomerate saw its stock plummet, its meticulously built reputation crumbling to dust. The echoes of Eliza's heartbroken sobs reverberated in Daniel's mind, a tormenting symphony that drowned out the celebratory whispers of the gala. He stood rooted to the spot, watching her disappear into the chaotic night, her figure shrinking until she was no more than a phantom in the rain-slicked streets. The glittering ballroom, once a symbol of his power and control, now felt like a suffocating cage, its opulence a cruel mockery of his shattered heart. He had meticulously built this facade, this elaborate test, only to destroy the one thing he genuinely cherished. Eliza, huddled in her cramped apartment with her grandmother, watched the unfolding drama on a small, crackling television. She saw Olivia's stunned, then furious, face on every screen, followed by images of her being escorted by stern-faced officers. The sheer scale of Daniel's public exposure, the lengths he had gone to reveal Olivia's true nature, sent shivers down her spine. When the news anchors detailed Olivia's direct interference with Eliza's jobs and her grandmother's medical treatment, Eliza's breath hitched. A fresh wave of tears streamed down her face. But this time, they were not just tears of pain, but of a profound, bewildering realization. Eliza's world tilted. This was a direct, brutal blow. Her grandmother was her last remaining beacon of hope, and Olivia was mercilessly trying to extinguish it. The realization that someone was deliberately trying to hurt her, to make her suffer, fueled a desperate and primal rage within Eliza. But she was exhausted, cornered, and utterly alone. "He did this for me." In that horrifying stillness, the grand media screen above the stage flickered to life. A breaking news alert flashed across it, a headline that slammed into Eliza's consciousness like a physical blow. The bitter sting of betrayal began to dull, replaced by a complex tapestry of emotions: shock, gratitude, confusion, and a burgeoning, fragile hope. Daniel, the man who had hurt her so deeply, was also the man who had risked everything: his reputation, his family's legacy, his very freedom to fight for justice on her behalf. The layers of his deception peeled back, revealing not a monster, but a man desperate for genuine connection. A man who, despite his flawed method, had genuinely loved her. Daniel, receiving news of Olivia's latest maneuver, felt a cold dread wash over him. His hidden efforts were being thwarted. Olivia's ruthlessness knew no bounds. He knew he had to act decisively, no longer just for Eliza's sake, but to protect his grandmother from Olivia's venom. He immediately activated a fallback plan, redirecting funds through an offshore account securing his grandmother's continued treatment outside Olivia's immediate sphere of influence. He would spare no expense, no effort to ensure her safety. Olivia's downfall was swift and decisive. Legal proceedings began immediately. Faced with irrefutable evidence compiled by Daniel's team, she had no escape. The charges were severe corporate fraud, obstruction of justice, and harassment. The once untouchable heiress was stripped of her power, her wealth, and her freedom. She was found guilty on multiple counts and sentenced to a lengthy prison term. Her empire reduced to ruins, a stark testament to the unwavering hand of justice. His desperate calls to her phone went unanswered. Each unanswered ring a sharp stab of rejection. Texts piled up, unread, their silent presence a testament to the impenetrable wall Eliza had erected between them. He sought her out, venturing into the familiar alleyways and the humble apartment building where their love had blossomed. But her door remained stubbornly shut. He could hear the faint, muffled sounds of her weeping from within, each sob tearing at his soul, confirming the depth of the pain he had inflicted. With Olivia's fate sealed, Daniel's immediate focus shifted entirely to Eliza. He knew his public vindication meant little without her forgiveness. He returned to her apartment building, no longer in disguise, no longer merely the poor man. He was Daniel Vance, CEO of Zenith Group, but more importantly, he was a man humbled by his mistakes, desperate to earn back the trust he had so carelessly shattered. One evening, Eliza was heading home, her shoulders slumped from a particularly long shift, when she saw Daniel sitting alone on a park bench. He was staring up at the inky sky, a faint, melancholic aura clinging to him. He looked utterly alone, a stark silhouette against the city lights. He knocked softly on her door, his heart hammering against his ribs. It felt like an eternity before the lock clicked. Eliza stood there, her eyes swollen from crying, her face pale, but her gaze met his with a newfound strength. Eliza, seeing her grandmother's care inexplicably resume, felt a flicker of bewildered relief amidst her despair. She couldn't understand how or why, but she clung to it as a fragile thread of hope. "Eliza?" His voice was barely a whisper, thick with emotion. Olivia, her eyes gleaming with triumphant malice, tightened her grip on Daniel's arm. "Oh, darling, you finally figured it out. What a slow learner. Didn't I warn you to stay away from my fiancé?" Her voice was a condescending purr, dripping with venom. Her eyes searched his, a whirlwind of emotions swirling within them. Did you really do all that for me, Daniel?" she asked, her voice trembling. "My grandmother's treatment, those jobs. Was that all, Olivia?" Despite the crushing weight of her circumstances, Eliza refused to break. Every blow Olivia inflicted, every act of malice, paradoxically hardened Eliza's resolve. She found solace in her worn notebook, now filled with not just notes, but raw, unfiltered stories of injustice, resilience, and the triumph of the human spirit. She poured her pain, her anger, and her unwavering hope onto the pages, crafting narratives that mirrored her own fight. She recognized her own fragile existence, yet also the dormant strength within her, a strength that was being forged in the crucible of adversity. Olivia's cruel attempts to crush her were, in fact, unknowingly shaping her into something formidable. Eliza was no longer merely surviving. She was preparing to fight back. And in her fight, she would uncover truths far greater than her personal heartbreak. Daniel nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Every bit of it. And yes, I did it for you. I should have told you everything from the start. My initial intention was to find genuine love, to escape the superficiality of my world. But by doing so, I dragged you into a nightmare I created. There's no excuse for deceiving you. Eliza, my guilt has been a constant torment. But my feelings for you, Eliza, were never part of the test. They were, and still are, real. You saw me, the man, not the CEO. And for that, I fell deeply in love with you. Eliza, please, just talk to me," he pleaded through the closed door, his voice hoarse with despair. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But please, let me explain." Eliza looked at him, truly saw him for the first time since that horrifying night at the gala. She saw the lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the raw vulnerability in his expression, the profound remorse that radiated from him. He wasn't arrogant or indifferent or manipulative. He was broken, just like her, And he was standing there, risking everything, asking for her forgiveness. The days that followed Eliza's public humiliation at the gala and the subsequent systematic dismantling of her life were a relentless torment. Her spirit, though resilient, felt like a ship battered by an unforgiving storm, barely staying afloat. The betrayal by Daniel, followed by Olivia's cold, calculating cruelty, had left her isolated and vulnerable. Yet, in the quiet solitude of her cramped room, amidst the mounting despair, a flicker of defiance sparked within her. She refused to be a victim. She would fight. A deep sigh escaped her lips, carrying with it months of accumulated pain, fear, and resentment. "You hurt me, Daniel, more than anyone ever has." Beneath the headline, a large, triumphant photo of Daniel, resplendent in a custom-tailored suit, smiling confidently, filled the screen. He looked powerful, in control, the undisputed master of his world. "I know," he choked out, his own eyes welling up. "And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you, if you'll let me." Her worn notebook, once a simple repository for notes and doodles, became her sanctuary, her weapon. She poured her raw emotions onto its pages, transforming her pain into prose, her anger into vivid dialogue. She wrote stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary injustice, of hidden truths struggling to see the light, of seemingly weak characters finding unimaginable strength. Her writing was raw, heartfelt, and deeply empathetic. It became her escape, her therapy, and slowly, her silent battle cry. She dreamed of a world where justice prevailed, where kindness was rewarded, and where secrets could not fester in the dark. Unbeknownst to her, this very act of creation was weaving itself into the fabric of Daniel's unfolding plan. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Eliza reached out, her hand hesitant, then firm, against his cheek. She felt the warmth of his skin, the sincerity in his gaze. I believed in the man who wore that old suit. Daniel, not the CEO, but I think that man is still in there." He couldn't endure the silence any longer. He had to act, not just for Eliza, but for his own fractured conscience. The poor man disguise, once a tool for discovery, was now a symbol of his failure. He shed it, not to reclaim his privilege, but to humble himself, to prove that his remorse was genuine. He would try to reach her, not as the CEO, but as Daniel, the man who had truly fallen in love with her. And then, she did something neither of them expected. She leaned forward, burying her face in his chest, and allowed herself to truly cry. Daniel wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly, feeling her trembling shoulders against him. It wasn't a moment of immediate, magical healing, but a raw, honest embrace of two souls battered by their respective storms, finding solace in each other's presence. All the unspoken words, the months of anguish, the fear of losing each other, poured out in that embrace. Daniel, meanwhile, was a man consumed by a singular purpose to protect Eliza and dismantle Olivia's insidious network of cruelty. He had watched from a distance as Olivia's machinations tightened around Eliza, her despair palpable even across the distance he kept. The news of Eliza's grandmother's treatment being threatened had pushed him to his breaking point. Olivia's vindictiveness had crossed a line, threatening the most vulnerable person in Eliza's life. "I can't promise it'll be easy to trust again," Eliza murmured, her voice muffled against his shirt. "But I want to try. I want to believe you." Daniel finally broke free from Olivia's grasp, a desperate plea in his eyes as he took a step towards Eliza. "Eliza, please let me explain. That's all I ask," Daniel whispered, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Just a chance. She will pay." Daniel's voice was a low, dangerous growl during a confidential meeting with his most trusted aide. "Marcus, leave no stone unturned. I want every single illegal act, every unethical maneuver, every whisper of corruption connected to Olivia and her family. Dig deep. The deeper, the better." Their reconciliation was a quiet, intimate affair, a rebuilding of trust, brick by painful brick. Eliza dedicated herself fully to her writing, inspired by her journey. Her story of resilience and the triumph of truth began to gain traction. Her raw, authentic voice resonated deeply with readers, and soon her book became a bestseller, offering hope and courage to countless others facing their own adversities. She used her newfound success not for personal gain, but to establish a foundation dedicated to assisting single mothers, and providing scholarships for underprivileged students. She was no longer just surviving, she was thriving, her purpose illuminated by her past trials. His first priority was Eliza's grandmother. Even in her devastated state, Eliza wouldn't accept direct aid. Daniel knew her pride, her fierce independence. He leveraged his true resources with utmost discretion, ensuring the grandmother's medical care continued seamlessly. He secretly arranged for top specialists and advanced equipment, ensuring the best possible treatment, all while meticulously concealing his involvement from Eliza. He would be her unseen guardian, alleviating one source of her immense stress. Daniel, now fully immersed in his role as CEO of Zenith Group, transformed the company's corporate culture. He championed transparency, ethical practices, and social responsibility, using his immense wealth and influence to genuinely make a positive impact on the world. He funded community projects, invested in sustainable technologies, and became a vocal advocate for corporate accountability. He was no longer the jaded heir, but a visionary leader, guided by the principles of integrity and empathy that Eliza had unknowingly instilled in him. Marcus, a stoic man whose loyalty to Daniel was absolute, nodded grimly. "Consider it done, Mr. Vance. We've already uncovered some disturbing ties, particularly regarding their recent acquisition of Meridian Textiles. Rumors of coerced buyouts and manipulated stock prices are circulating. Their journey was a testament to the enduring power of unconditional love and the triumph of sincerity over deceit." Eliza, once the poor girl who spent her last cent on a suit, now stood as a testament to the truth that genuine kindness and resilience are treasures far more valuable than any fortune. Daniel, the CEO who pretended to be poor, found his true wealth not in his bank accounts, but in the unwavering love and forgiveness of the woman who saw past his facade. Their story, forged in hardship and redeemed by truth, became a beacon of hope, proving that even after the darkest storms, a new beginning, filled with enduring love, is always possible. Eliza's vision blurred. The pristine white serving tray she had borrowed from the hotel staff, meant for small hors d'oeuvres, slipped from her trembling fingers. It crashed to the marble floor with a deafening clatter, echoing through the sudden silence that had fallen over the ballroom. All eyes turned to her. Thanks for watching. If this story touched your heart and you want to see more powerful narratives of love, justice, and resilience, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay with us for our next compelling tale. And while you're here, why not explore our other videos? There's always more to inspire and move you. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Rumors aren't enough. I need irrefutable proof. Documents, recordings, witness testimonies. I want to build a case that even their vast influence can't overturn. And make sure it's legally airtight. Where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing from our incredible community. Ensure complete anonymity. He instructed his chief of staff, his voice firm, tinged with urgency. No direct contact with Ms. Eliza. All medical bills are to be settled immediately, and no questions asked. Over the next few weeks, Daniel's elite team of investigators, armed with Zenith Group's unparalleled resources, worked tirelessly. Operating in the shadows, they meticulously uncovered a web of corporate espionage, illegal lobbying, and outright fraud connected to Olivia's family conglomerate. They found evidence of Olivia herself orchestrating a hostile takeover of a smaller textile company through intimidation and bribery, destroying countless livelihoods in the process. More chillingly, they unearthed irrefutable proof of Olivia's direct interference with Eliza's employment and her attempts to cut off Eliza's grandmother's medical care, complete with damning emails and recorded phone conversations. The scale of Olivia's malice was far greater than Daniel had initially imagined.